Hey, everybody, welcome to the Simplified Church podcast. We are so grateful that you've joined us. We know that you never miss an episode, and for that, we are so incredibly grateful.
Thank you.
And we know that many of you were waiting, just trying to see what we might come up with next, especially following up with some comments from the last episode about bougie farming and a bougie farm community, and what it might look like, and what you might call a bougie dog catcher from a bougie dog community. And so I've got some for you to kind of open us up just a little bit, Mike, because I thought this would be good and helpful for us. So you ready?
Fire away, my man. I'm
so,
on pins and needles here.
So here's the first one: the aristocratic herd herders.
I like that one. Aristocratic. Okay.
The second one, the regal retriever wranglers.
Oh man, that's pretty good too. That's a strong contender.
It is. Or the elite canine chasers.
Oh, see, that's good because that really, I think, separates the men from the boys. This is an elite group of highly trained professionals.
I'm kind of getting there. The grandiose canine capturers.
Okay.
The prestige pup patrol.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a spinoff from Paw Patrol.
It does. So not my favorite. But I'm gonna give you my favorite. All of these brought to you by our friends at AI Chat GPT.
Okay.
Conversation. Yeah. Insert sponsorship here.
Yep.
But here's the best one, and I think it really does hit the mark. So the bougie farm community dog catcher should be known as the highbrow hound hunter.
Oh man, that is just a round of applause from everybody in the studio, because that is.
I really think that's the winning ticket.
Wow. Yeah, the highbrow hound hunters.
Yes, the highbrow hound hunters. We should get that on a hat.
Yeah, I think that would look good on a hat and various large nets. Nets on sticks.
Yes.
Because in my mind, that's how they're catching these dogs.
Yes.
Is they're using long sticks with nets.
Yes.
And just but these guys are all well educated.
That's right.
It's a group of retired college professors.
Yes, and they probably ride Segways instead of like the dog catcher mobile. Probably Segways.
Yes, yeah. They've got tactical belts, helmets with maybe a little light on the top.
Yes.
That.
Yeah, because it's got to be bougie.
It's got to be bougie, man. It's got well dressed, tweed jackets.
Yes.
I like that.
And probably with that kind of name, like they're probably like doing the whole Sherlock Holmes look, the tweed cap with the double bill.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
That's what I'm going with.
With the guy that leads it, his name is Preston.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. His name's Preston. He leads this distinguished group.
That's right.
Of hound hunters.
Man, this is great radio.
I think if you were listening, you're no longer. I think that's what happened. People just went, I thought this was supposed to be about church stuff. This is dumb. This is not dumb, okay? This is us getting the juices flowing so we can bring forth life-changing content.
That's right.
That your church needs.
That's right.
Man.
Well, man, now that we've wandered about nothing, man, tell me about your weekend.
I've I was just thinking, should I keep this thing going or do I just let it go? I'll just let it go. I'm updating my LinkedIn profile.
You know that it could have been.
Yeah.
We could have gone for 25 minutes on nothing. So
easily. I mean, imagine how long we can go on something. We can go exponentially further on nothing. Man, weekend was good, dude. We had a great holiday. Honestly, it was a lot of fun. Family and friends over, grilling out, doing just the classic July 4th. We kind of kicked things to Friday a little bit, only because Thursday we had some inclement weather that we were we were just navigating and seeing how that was going to hit. But we did that. Just had some great family time, man. Like we just hung out a lot, spent time together, and watched some movies. And I stayed up late a couple nights watching some movies, and and it was just fun. Like we just had a great time. Blew a bunch of stuff up.
Hey,
It was
That's
awesome.
it. All right. So what's on the 4th of July movie list?
So my kids are not at that place yet where I really want to show them like Independence Day
I understand.
and kind of watch it. We're not quite there. My oldest kids could handle that, I think, pretty well. Younger kids could not. So we just kind of did some generic kids movies. We watched Migration.
All right.
We hadn't seen that one yet, and they really like that. We've been working our way through the CW series of The Flash.
Okay.
So we watched a little bit of that, and then just some other kind of kids movies along the way. But man,
So
it was great.
so no Independence Day, no Joe
No,
Dirt.
no. We watched some clips from Joe Dirt because
Okay.
I don't know that they're quite ready to see that movie in its entirety and all of its idiocy.
Glory.
Yeah.
Glorious
Sorry,
idiocy.
glory. That's what I meant to say. Yeah. But no, man, it was super fun. Like we just had a really great time. A lot of
All
family
right.
time mixed in there. We went out and just did some family hangouts and stuff too along the way. Played some games. And oh man, it was We played what do you meme family edition. We played this card game called Munchkin, which is super fun, super satirical and goofy, and got to hang out with some good friends
All right.
along the way too, and had a late night garage hang, which I always enjoy. But oh man, it was great, dude. What about you guys? I mean, I've set a high standard here. Can you beat it?
No, I can't beat it, but it was pretty quiet. Um, it's unusual to have stacked that many days of nothing,
Yeah.
like as far as no responsibilities kind of stuff between Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So that was
Mm.
super. Didn't really do a whole lot. We did catch a couple of holiday flicks. So we watched National Treasure because
Oh man, how could you
um,
not?
yeah, I mean, so there you go. I watched Independence Day because there you go. It is a necessary part of the fourth holiday,
Have to.
to be
Yep.
sure. But yeah, other than that, fairly quiet, and that's not a bad thing. But yeah, I think it was a great weekend and nice and restful, and I'll take that.
Man, those are sometimes the best weekends. I One of my favorite lines comes from the movie Christopher Robin, the live action Winnie the Pooh. If you've seen that,
I
sort of,
haven't.
yeah, it's pretty cool, man. You should check it out. It's super heartwarming. Excuse me. Well, I'm getting all choked up. Whoa, Moses! I don't know where that came from, but listeners are like, "Oh, okay, great. This bunch of amateurs." But we were. I don't have. If I mute everything, then it's silly on video. So we're all adults here. Okay, let's just show some grace. But it's the Christopher Robin movie, live action Winnie the Pooh. But anyway, it killed the momentum here. But the line that he says, Pooh asked Christopher Robin. He says, what are we going to be doing today? And his answer was nothing. And Winnie the Pooh thought about it, and he said that sometimes doing nothing leads to the very best something. And I love that. There's so much depth to that simple statement that there's just a lot of joy at times in doing nothing.
For
So
sure. And it's
um,
an art form.
yeah, it is. It's a skill one has to acquire over time. But that sounds good for you, man.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Well, we're gonna jump right in because we have lots of things that are meaningful. Not that catching up with my friend Mike is not meaningful, but like most of you probably are like, man, these guys are weird, but it is what it is. But now for what we've actually come to do,
Yes.
taking up the subject of the day, we want to transition and be talking about how to lead our church through change. We've been talking about how to keep momentum and how to be thinking critically and all those kind of things, and dealing with difficulties and all those different kind of things over the last
Hmm.
several weeks and months. And now we want to start talking through how do we actually lead through some of the change. You've maybe identified some of the problem spots, some of the pain points, but now what? How do we
Yeah.
begin to lead our churches through change? And how do we ensure that we come out on the other side um, not only still in our spot
Yeah. Seriously.
of being able to lead our churches, but also hopefully to the location that we were planning to go, where we were trying to lead them. And so that's kind of where we're going today. This will be at least a 2-part episodes series. So Mike's going to kind of lead us through this conversation, but as we kind of figure out how is it that we lead our churches through change and navigating those waters.
Man, I was just thinking it'd be so hilarious if I had to cough real bad again just now. Just what is happening to that man? He's dying on the radio. Man, like change is one of those things that it's inevitable in the life of your church. If you've been in ministry for any length of time, you know that change it's always right around the corner in some way, shape, or form. And for the most part, I think churches have adapted to that notion. And it used to be that change was always somewhat of a fight. That usually churches kind of found themselves in a particular stride and just don't want to disrupt that. We've got programming that we like. We've got music that we like. We've got staff that we like. We've got kind of a particular brand that we're connected to. And it slowly over time removes any sort of outward focus and becomes more inward focused and about maintaining that level of enthusiasm, that level of peace and comfortability that it provides for us. And that was a really difficult, I think, time in particularly the Western church. But now we're kind of in this season where it's like, man, change seems to be happening more frequently. It happens sometimes more drastically than even what we're prepared for as we see, churches growing, churches taking on new methods, new approaches, new models, and certainly with staff turnover, right? Like that, man, it can be change is almost now like just a reality and just a matter of when and what and not if. And so change is one of those things that I don't know that we need to be scared of. I don't know that we need to push back against necessarily, but instead ensuring that our church is positioned well to lead effectively through change. Because I think change can be very healthy and can be very good if it's the right kind of change. But even if the change isn't good, even if it isn't healthy, and it's sometimes that change could be traumatic, it could be chaotic. I mean, it could be a crisis that unfolds. That still doesn't relieve us of our obligation to have really healthy systems, really healthy processes for how we effectively lead through that change. And so no matter what you're facing in terms of change in your church, we just want to give you some kind of practical steps and some practical tools. And as we start off into that kind of deep end of water, swimming around here a little bit, I think it'd be kind of interesting just to identify like what are a handful, a handful of really positive changes that we can be leading through, and then what are some of those negative changes so that we can kind of help pastors and leaders identify maybe a placement of where they're at. Like, sure, there might be some very specific things they're changing or dealing with, but sometimes change comes and there's often like warning signs, there's bells that ring, and we're not always looking for it. We're not always paying attention to it. And so from your seat, Greg, as you think about maybe just, you've been at your church now 6-7 years, going on maybe even longer, but you've been in ministry for 20 years. What are some of the what are some of the like really positive changes that you've seen take place, and how has your church responded to some of those changes as they've come about?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we've kind of tried to shift and help our people come along with us on that journey is that shift of away from inward focus to being more outward focused.
That's a good one.
And that can be a really hard transition, or it can be a really good transition. It just kind of depends on your place and what's going on and what other things are happening. But so far, our people have responded quite well to it in saying, hey, we really want to be about this, especially because we've tried to go after the low-hanging fruit stuff.
Yeah.
To first accomplish this. Like, hey, we want to go out of our way to just overdo it when it comes to the way that we try to care for teachers in our school district.
Yeah.
And going out of our way to say to the schools, hey, we're for you. and we want to be here to support you and to engage you and to encourage you and all of those different kind of things. And so that simple shift has kind of paved the way for us to be able to do some more things that shift and say, we want to, yes, keep ensuring that we are taking care of our people well, but positioning them as we take care of them well to turn out to the community and begin to engage them at a deeper level. And so that has been a really good change that we've seen even over the last maybe 14, 15 months. Some of the other changes that we have made are big structural changes.
Yep. These are
Like,
pretty common.
And they are. And just kind of the way that we do business shifts. A few years ago, we outsourced our bookkeeping. That was a big deal initially for our people. And so, making that adjustment, and it has freed us up exponentially to do more ministry. I spend much less time looking at financial documents and wading through those details on a regular basis than when all of that stuff was in-house. And so that shift made a huge dividend in the life of the staff and in the life of the church as far as how we go about communicating that information and doing ministry instead of being busy about doing the things that have to be done so that we can do ministry. And so that was a big change that we made that was hard. Now it didn't happen here, but in previous churches, man, I've led through the worship wars.
Oh man.
I've got the scars to prove it.
Yep.
Some of them were really good battles and they were worth it. Others, if I could go back and look at, do it over again, I wouldn't do it the same way. Not long ago, probably maybe a year and a half ago, I had somebody reach out who I've known for years and years and say, "Hey, I gave your name to such and such church. They're looking for a worship guy." And it's a church that I've known for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I said, "Why would you give them my name?" "Well, they're dealing with the worship wars and you've dealt with all that already."
Oh,
Yeah,
yay.
I've got the scars. I'd not really like to do that again. In fact, hard pass. In fact, I think I couched it as, "You better keep my name out your mouth."
Whoa, you Will Smith them.
Deeply spiritual.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. It's tough, dude. Like, and the fact that like it instantly brings up a level of anxiety almost that like someone's even, like, holy smokes, I'm not interested in that at all. Yeah.
And so that was necessary and meaningful change, but it was hard. And leading through that change was difficult. And in a lot of those cases, I was green as green could be.
Sure.
Trying to lead through this. And so it's hard. It's worth doing if you are convinced and convictional about it. But no, it's gonna be painful. It's gonna be hard. So those are just some of the kind of ways that I've led through change in a variety of ways. I've led through not having a preaching pastor. I've led through trying to do building projects. I've led through major staffing changes, and all of those are possible. And all of those are worth doing when they are presenting themselves, but they're hard.
Yeah, because good changes and or seemingly difficult or quote unquote bad changes, they all bring about a level of subjectivity to them where everyone is seeing it from a certainly a different perspective and a different vantage point, and they're going to have a different level of opinion on that. But regardless of how those changes are seen or how they're experienced, those changes, they just exist now as part of kind of the zeitgeist of a Western Christianity. Like those are things that are going to be constantly coming up in conversations around methods and models and practices and org charts and how we readdress vision, values, mission statements, all of these things, right? These are kind of reoccurring um, points of conversation that aren't bad to have. Like, it's good because you want to stay fresh, you want to stay relevant, you want to stay you know, on the kind of the cutting edge of how we're reaching the people that are moving into our community. And so all of those things are going to be on the table. And so, as just like you said, like as we approach those changes, we've got to identify a couple things on the front end that I think are really going to be helpful in allowing us to meet change wherever it comes in whatever form that it comes. And first and foremost, I would say one of the best ways to lead your church through change is to overcommit to prayer. Now, I know that sounds like a Jesus joke, but it's not meant to be. But the problem is, a lot of times when it comes to change in our churches, whether it's a really good change, like going to a more outward focus, and we're going to be more community minded, and we're going to be more present in the needs of our community. That's a great change. But that should not be met within our own power and our own ability. It should be met with a lot of prayer, because prayer has the ability to go long before us, and has the ability to go behind us and even change some hearts and change some minds and soften the ground before we even start having those kinds of
For sure.
conversations. So I mean, so I really do mean this, that overall, when it comes to expecting change or anticipating change, or even just pursuing it, we've got to have a larger emphasis on prayer. And so it's bringing about the people that are going to be in charge of leading through that change, of affirming that change. And I would even argue that it should be about bringing about the people that change is going to affect first, and bring those people together for prayer and say, hey, here's some things that we're praying through right now. Nothing is for sure. There's, nothing's definitive, but
Right.
we're praying about this. Let's pray about this together. And I think when we allow God to become the heartbeat, and that conversation with him to become the heartbeat of our decision making for the changes that are coming, that puts, not only does that put a lot of change in our pocket relationally, but it also says, God, we want to do this, but you've got to do the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
So I think prayer, first and foremost, is a necessary component. And I know that sounds like, man, just the most cliche, simple answer, but it really is probably the most important thing. And it's the one thing we overlook the most, and we try to hurry through. Like, let's just open with prayer, and we pray, we pray for a minute, 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, but we discuss for an hour, hour and a half at plus.
Right.
Like, I don't know how many meetings you've been a part of where a lot of decisions are being made, and there's maybe a total of 10 minutes of prayer,
Right.
but a total of 4 minutes of conversation. And it's not to say that God isn't working through those conversations. Of course he is. He's present. He's in us. So of course we're asking for his discernment and his ability to give us wisdom and clarity. But man, it is an easy thing to dismiss. And I like what you said, because I have this on my list, is you talked about low-hanging fruit. And leading through change requires identifying some of those really simple victories that can allow you to capture and sustain positive momentum toward a larger change.
Yep.
And so grabbing that low-hanging fruit is super helpful, because here's what it does. Low-hanging fruit, it demonstrates that change is worth it. It says that this direction we're going, this is worthy of our time and our energy and our efforts, because look what it's already producing. It's already right there. And so why would we not do that? And so sometimes picking that low-hanging fruit requires us to say, there's already, like, look where God's already moving. Look what he's already doing. How can we grab that and learn from that and grow that into something bigger? And that really helps shape the conversation. I mean, it definitely, it affirms change that needs to happen. It can oftentimes help bring clarity around our strategy and the particular tactics that we're using. It allows us to have evidence, so that when resistance inevitably comes, we can say, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but look at this.
Right.
It's evidence, man. And so evidence, I think, to some degree, when it comes to supporting the need for change, is really important. And that's probably the last one I would hit on for this conversation today. Then I'd be curious to get your thoughts, but if it's not prayer and it's not low hanging fruit, it's objectifying the subjective. And what I mean by that is this: that uh, when we start talking about changes that need to be made, and we start doing that in a forum based environment where we're getting different opinions and ideas, and we're trying to get input on how that's going to affect things. Um, it can be so easy to get stuck
Mhm.
to where now it's everyone's personal thoughts, personal ideas. And then people, man, they get very attached to their own ideas and they get very attached. And so ministry becomes very personal. And so then it's like, well, we were going to do that, but it just seemed like if we did, then there'd be these folks would get upset. Or if we took a vote, then we're going to be split. And it's not what we have to do is take a step back and say, this is not about subjective change. This is about objectifying the change. And what I mean by that is we have to bring a certain level of clarity and a certain level of vision
Mhm.
around why this change needs to occur and where we believe we will be moving as a church, if we can bring great clarity and great vision to it. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think you're 100% right that um, we have to be sure that um, that we're asking the questions that we want answers to.
Yes.
I know it sounds terrible, but the adage is true. Don't ask questions you don't want answers for.
My goodness. Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we're coming into meetings knowing that there needs to be change, we want a whiteboard conversation where it's nothing's off the table, nothing's out of bounds. We'll talk about anything, consider any option. You don't usually mean that.
No, no.
So don't ask that question.
Man, I appreciate you saying that, man, because that is so true.
Um, Go in with very specific questions so that you can make it very objective to say, no, 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 no. At this point, let's talk about black and white. Let's talk about what we know and let's begin to walk toward that. Yes, you can start giving your opinions and your takes and all of those things, and those have value. But if it's not guided, you're never going to get anywhere because you're going to get 1,000 suggestions and most of them aren't going to be good, or most of them aren't going to be ones that you can actually do anything about because it's so big or so out there that like yeah, we might be able to do that in 10 years, but we can't do that right now. And so having some framework and some structure, I think helps in a lot of that conversation, being able to kind of guide the way. And I think you were kind of going this direction just a little bit in a previous statement, but um, kind of classify your change.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is, um, okay, is this a change because we see a need? Is this a change based on something that has happened, like a disastrous situation where we are responding because of something negative that happened? Not that it changes what you do, but I think when you can give it that classification and you can own that reality, hey, this is going to be a difficult change because this is coming out of a difficult situation. So a staff person left or had to be terminated or whatever. And it's a pain point right now. Own that and let that drive how you respond. Let
Yep.
that drive how you navigate the change. And so classify your kinds of change. Is this simply a ministry objective change? Is this an organizational change? Is this a change resulting from a painful situation? Like what is the classification of this change, and allow for that to then determine kind of how you proceed. I think is really, really helpful um, to then effectively lead change so that you can say, hey, we know that this is super difficult. And so we want to make sure that we're spending an inordinate or what feels like an inordinate amount of time praying.
Man,
Um,
yes.
what does that look like? I think with that, I would encourage don't rush.
Oh
Especially
man.
especially if it's something you're not sure of, or if it's something that has a lot of pain points. Because by and large, there are very few decisions that a church needs to make, or very few changes that a church needs to make that have to happen tomorrow. There may be some responses that have to happen tomorrow.
Sure.
Hey, you need to terminate an employee, or you need to whatever. I get that. But like real lasting change that you're trying to lead through, there's probably nothing that has to happen tomorrow or decided by next week, or like you've got time. Don't rush it, so that you can ensure that your people know that you are being serious, that you are praying through this, that you have a team of folks who are gathering to pray, that the church is gathering to pray through these things, not just, okay, well, I thought about this for a day or two. Now here's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I
Because
think
that's super dangerous.
and I think that's helpful, man, because what happens is there are, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've definitely experienced this throughout my years of ministry, where it seems like a lot of decisions are made in haste. And it seems like decisions are made without real kind of clarity or purpose. And it seems to be like a pattern, like a pattern has emerged in this.
For sure.
And so then people don't have their time to get their heads around it. They don't have time to understand the overall impact to their ministry or their specific department. And now that tends to breed a level of distrust. It tends to maybe even a level of skepticism over like, well, are you even really considering, it just, what happens is when there's not a committed process, we fall into these kind of unhealthy patterns and cycles. And that's a very unhealthy pattern to get into, of making rash decisions without giving time for lots of conversations, prayer, bringing other voices into the situation. Like that, man, that's so important to do. And so if your church is in that spot where you feel like, man, we're kind of in this pattern of either just not making decisions, we're not changing, we're not leading through change, we're not responding, or we're doing it too quickly, then we've got to step back and evaluate like what processes are we actually using, and we need to commit to some, so that we can find some really healthy, repeatable behaviors to get us to the other side. Because the other side, the end goal is not just to implement the change in and of itself. The other side is to implement a change that brings more trust, more credibility, greater impact, more equipping, more lives being changed and impacted for the sake of the gospel. That's the other side that we're trying to get to. And that can't happen quickly. It just can't. It takes time. And so you can't expect the kind of results that you want to see if you're not willing to put the work in on the front end. It's just like going outside in your field and with your boot kicking up a couple clumps of dirt and throwing some seed and just going, well, boys, sit back and relax, because this fall, here comes payday.
Right.
That's not how that works. I mean, there's a reason why farming is such a beautiful metaphor for ministry. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of planning. It's a lot of prepping. And at the end of the day, it ultimately belongs to Jesus for the harvest, and that, man, I think that's just good. So this is the first leg of this conversation. Greg and I, we're going to be continuing this conversation in next week's episode. It'll be a part 2 of leading your church through change. We're going to have some more kind of proven steps, but those are 3 right now that you can take back to your team, that you can have conversations around. You can send those to folks on your team and say, hey, man, I'd like for us to talk about this. One of the best ways that you can utilize the Simplified Church podcast is to use it as a conversation starter with your teams and in your ministry. So whether if it's just you serving and you've got a lot of lay leaders or a couple of volunteers, or regardless of like what your situation is, this is just a great way to help really spur on development and growth by kicking these over to your team and say, hey, this is about a 35-minute podcast. The first 10 minutes is a little rocky, but the rest of it's pretty good. So just kick it over to your team and have them take a listen. and utilize that as a great conversation starter for how this could impact your church, because that's what we're after, is we're helping everyday pastors and leaders just like you. I know you hear that every week, and we never get tired of saying it, because it is the reality with which we are so profoundly committed to. And so we hope that you will you'll come back and join us for a part 2 next week. We'd love to connect with you always through our website, social media.
Mike,
What?
you've been saying it wrong. It's not part 2.
You know what? I'm sorry. I appreciate you interrupting me.
It's part 2.
It's part 2. Yeah. You know, I felt like an idiot just even saying it. Part 2. And you know, I had a feeling that was coming. I don't know if you could tell the hostile nature with which I answered you. What? What do you want?
It was on
It was
purpose.
coming. I knew it was coming, man. So I'm committed. We'll kick off part 2 next week. Send us an email, Facebook, do something. We love you. We'll talk to you next week.